Hello, everybody, and welcome to Life After the Military, a show completely focused on reversing the trend of veteran suicide by helping veterans transition from military to civilian life and strengthening the mental fitness of our active duty military members, veterans, and their families. Our show is powered by Pivotal Moments Media, an organization on a mission to strengthen mental fitness worldwide for all. Go check them out at pivotalmomentsmedia.com to learn more. My name is Lee Elias, and I am joined, as always, by my good friend and co-host, Howie Cohen, and we are privileged to have Colonel Retired Jay Santiago Jr. with us today. Jay served for over 25 years in the United States Army as a signal officer and spent over 20 of those years serving in airborne and special operations forces assignments worldwide. Jay transitioned out of the Army in 2011 and went to work for Worldwide Technology, where he currently works today. And if my math is correct, that's almost 11 years with the same company. That's almost unheard of in today's marketplace. Jay held a variety of positions that included business development and systems engineering manager. Jay holds a bachelor's degree in electronics from the Universidad de Puerto Rico, a master's degree in computer resources and information from Webster University, is a graduate of the Chief Information Officer course at the National Defense University, and has a graduate certificate in Western Hemispheric from the Inter-American Defense College. That's a lot of education, and I love it. Jay also serves as the president of the Shadow Warrior Association in support of the 112th Signal Battalion Special Operations Airborne. Jay, I love reading intros like that. Welcome to Life After the Military.
Lee, thanks for having me. When you were reading the bio, I thought, who they're talking about? But I appreciate the time and appreciate being here. And Howie, good seeing you too. And it's an honor and a privilege just to be here and be able to have a conversation with you guys.
Well, I'll tell you, I love reading intros like that. And it's you. We're talking about you. This is your life, right? As we always like to say. No, I appreciate that, man. But I'll tell you what I love about these intros. As a military spouse, you all never get the recognition you deserve. And I know that the attitude is always, hey, I don't need that. I didn't do this for that. But I'm telling you, someone who has my position, who really has a lot of respect for all of you and everything you've done, I love reading those out because it not only affirms you, but it affirms your service. It affirms, what you've done for the country and do for the country. And it's my pleasure to do that, even though it might be a little uncomfortable, which I understand. But
Jay, did you notice Lee's inflection when he read about your first degree? I was very I was very impressed, Lee.
I was impressed too. He rolled his R, so this is amazing. So that is that's a good sign. This is going to be good. So
little quick context on that. My wife is from Puerto Rico, as I've heard many times in my life. And I'm going to be honest with you, it took me a lot of years to have the guts to do that because you can butcher it if you're not careful. But I do that out of the utmost respect for those people, yourself, my wife, and my family. So I do appreciate the recognition on that. I feel okay. This is about you, Jay. Let's get back on you. Jay, you served a magnificent career in the Army Signal as an Army Signal officer for over 25 years. Let's share with the audience how you prepared and executed your transition out of the Army to the private sector. What went well? What didn't go well? What would you do differently now in the position that you're in?
Well, Lee and Howie, again, thanks for giving me the opportunity to use your stage here to be able to communicate my story. And hopefully if that is able to help another veteran or somebody else as they're going through their own transition and their own journey in life, then so be it. As to the compliments, I received them. And first of all, I give God the glory, but I also, just like I tell everybody that says, thank you for your service, I say, you're worth it. Because it's really, when you look about it, we live in the greatest country in the world. We have so many opportunities here, having the opportunity to have traveled many places where this is not common, right? The ability to just gather together and talk and be able to express and even disagree in a way it's not common. And sometimes we take that for granted. So, when somebody says, thank you for your service, I say, you're worth it, because it's worth doing it. It's the time and sacrifice that our men and women in uniform put out there. They're doing it for service. They're not doing it clearly not to get any money. But that's in terms of the transition, I will tell you, I can certainly tell you right out front what I did wrong. And, it probably is common across many veterans that are transitioning, right? Whether you're 1 year, 5 years, or 10, 15, or 20, probably the VA the whole VA process and getting through that and getting through that process was one of those areas that because it had to do something about me and getting some benefits or whatever that is, I never related it until I had an experience with my father, who was also retired, and he was 100% disabled. How really those benefits are not for you; they're intended for eventually for your family, as for your family to be take care of for you, right? And the story behind that is, after Maria, my father was completely disabled down there in Puerto Rico. I had to go down there, kind of rescue him. Even my company helped me with that whole situation there. But I brought him over to Virginia here, to where I live, to live for 6 months. But just that transition, having the VA help, and it's an organization like anything else. It was really, I just started to thinking, man, if I had to assume that by ourselves, that would have been a tremendous burden on the family. So it's not that they cover everything, but man, that really helped. And it really realized to me that Dad did that for us, and it's really for the family members, because eventually, after being beaten around for many years and jumping out of planes and doing all those kinds of things that you do, right? Eventually, those things are going to catch up with you, and that's why you do it. So I recommend that people go through that particular transition, understand that it's a process, understand that there are people, veteran service organizations, that are willing to help through that problem. They do it for free. There are others that would do it for money, and it's okay. I actually encourage those, because you pay for what you get for, right? And then, but understand that it's a completely different process within the federal system, but it's intended to help not only you, but eventually your families as you transition. Because one thing we have to think about is that we all get old, and we all eventually are things that they don't show up, immediately. They show up over time. On these injuries. So I would tell you that's the one thing that I did wrong. Eventually we fixed it. It took me about 3 years to get through that process. But it's understand, how like we said in special operations, right? I was a special operations communicator, right? Not like you, Howie, a ranger guy that served within the regiment, but I had it's one of the first rules in special operations is understand the operational environment and operate within it. And you need to understand the VA, it's its own operational environment, its own bureaucracy, understand the CFR 38, the things, that get yourself smart on that and go through that process. I do think that the military has done great things in terms of that, in terms of ratings before they actually retire, and going through that whole process. That wasn't available when I retired. I don't think it was available, Howie, when you retired, but they've gotten a lot better with that process. So service members at least have a rating before they leave, and it might not be the rating that they deserve, but at least it's a start, and they get into within that process and understanding that. So that's the one thing that I kind of did wrong on that process. And I would really encourage everybody that understand that, it's really start thinking in a mindset of, just like, it's hard for us to think about ourselves, because everything has been always about the mission, the people, and everybody else, and then eventually you. But it's important to really start thinking about this from the perspective that this is not for you, it's for your spouse and your children, and things that it's to lighten their burden when you become, if hopefully not, but if you become incapacitated in a sense. So that's that personal story on that one. Things that I think I did well was probably one, I always tell veterans when and I enjoy talking about transition, is if we don't have a conversation again about transition, is take time to transition. The mission is transition. Take time to think, to develop questions, to understand what is it, one, yourself, and reacquaint yourself back to yourself, especially whether it was 5, 10, or 20, or 25 or 30 years. You've been working in an organization where you knew the path, you understand the people. It really didn't matter the job, and sometimes the job just really didn't work, really the best jobs, but it was the people that made the difference, and you're going into an unknown. So address the elephant in the room and say, hey, there are some concerns, there are some fears. I know we don't like to talk about those things, but understand that you need to take some time to think and do that. And it's hard to do so while you're in the job, right? It's hard to do so because we don't want to be called we don't want to be called retired road people, retired on active duty. But it's hard because you want to still contribute. You want to still be a contributing member of the team while you're in uniform, because you're wearing it. But you need to take some time after you sever the ties with the military to actually think about the next stage and ask questions like, for example, Is it a job? Is it a job or a career that you want to have? There's two different things. There's no wrong answer. That's a good thing. Where do you want to live? Zip code is a choice. Go through that process. Bring your spouse into this conversation, because the first time, wherever you're going to move, it's going to be your own choice. Or what you're going to do is going to be your own choice. Take the time to do some introspective thinking. And I think this is hard for leaders, because it's an amazing thing as you grow up in leadership. One of the last things that you have is time. And you got to really take the rigor and discipline to take some specific time to think about these things, not only for yourself, but for the people that you lead. And that doesn't change over time, but it's bring that practice and understand that the mission is transition moving forward. So the other thing is take time to develop, I think, develop the network, right? And people talk, well, I got my resume and I got this, and I said, well, it's not your resume that's going to get you the job or the career that you want. It's your network, right? People that are advocates for you, that know how we come, and how they will call you, and people, and there will be people that will be advocates for you, people that will help you transition. Reach out to people that have been there before, and you see success and have the opportunity. Talk to them. Make sure you start defining terms as to where you're going to go. If you, and I keep going back to, you want a job or career, they're two different things. One is, it might be an 8 to 5, not necessarily you don't want a career path, but if you want to go into a new career in which you want to progress and have the ability to progress, then you got to be able to understand what questions to ask when you're sitting across the table and you're interviewing the other company, the company that you want to go to, and you have some terms of reference. Is there somebody that can teach me the ropes here? Is this a learning organization? Am I willing to learn from that person on the other side? Those are questions that you need to ask for yourself. And then the other piece of why you need time is, you need to understand yourself, right? Again, reacquainting yourself, understanding what are your gifts and talents, what is the value that you bring to that organization, and you're able to articulate that in a sense that's unequivocal. Yeah, here's who I am, here's what I bring to the table. And then you need to understand, doing from the company, does it fit for that particular company at that particular time? And then do you see a future for that company that's aligned with your future? This is where the core values and the culture make a difference. So to me, when I was transitioning, I understood from the beginning is that I discovered that I was an entrepreneur, right? That profit is not a 4-letter word. You kind of have a reshaping of that. The profit is not a 4-letter word. We live in a capitalist society. We actually have armed forces, kind of like that way of life, of free enterprise. And it's not bad, right? You can do honest, good work and still make a profit. There's no, for some reason, maybe it might have been my upbringing, but they're not separate concepts. So if that's the case, then you need to go to a company to learn how to be an entrepreneur, or to have an entrepreneur spirit, or you can have your own business. You can go into consulting by yourself. So, but you don't get to that point unless you take the time to think, to understand, to reflect, and to develop those ties.
Jay, you mentioned so many valuable things here, and I think Lee and I would like you to just take a few minutes and maybe unpack a little bit of that. Right. First of all, you took only 3 years. I'm embarrassed to tell you. You know how many years it took me to put in my my VA benefits package? 10 years, man.
Wow. Yeah, 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I completely screwed that up. Right. And I hadn't even thought about it the way you described it, and that's the reason I bring this back up, is because I think that is such a valuable way to look at it, that it's not really about you, it's about taking care of your family, right? And so, if I would say, as a transitioning veteran, if you look at it that way, that it's about how you can better take care of your family, then maybe that'll motivate you to do everything you have to do to make sure everything is documented in your medical history. And then you go through the VA process and get assessed. Do it. If you're not concerned about yourself, then do it for your family. That is a really good way. It kind of reminds me, Jay, because I've had this discussion, I'm sure you have too, of folks when they folks who are approaching the retirement age, right? They say, well, I don't want to do a ceremony, right? And the discussion I had with soldiers or sailors or airmen or Marine or Coast Guardsmen was, hey, bud, this isn't for you. This is for your family. This is for all the people who sacrifice so much over the course of your career to help you be successful. You're doing this for them. And now I understand you may not want to do this because you don't want to be the center of attention, but they deserve this ceremony. They deserve to be recognized, and you really need to reconsider this and do it for them. So I think it's a very similar conversation, right?
I agree. I totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree. And again, it's celebrating markers, right? And be able to look back. But also understand that you did not get there by yourself. It's really to give credit to the people by why you did it, for whom you did it, and really kind of recenter and refocus. So it's a place and time in which you're ready and you're announcing to the world, and you yourself making the transition of just moving from one place to another. So if it's a big ceremony or a small ceremony, I was of the same time, and I had great mentors that basically told me the same thing. This is not for you, and we're going to do this right. And they actually went through the whole trouble of going through that retirement ceremony. And I give them all the credit for that. It's just that, but it was really for my family. It was really for them to see that, you know, the times that you spend away from them, the times, the sacrifices, it was really saying, it was really honoring them and taking the time to honor. And then your friends and people, NCOs or officers that you serve, peers that are walked you through and were able to support you in the good times and in the bad times, right? So it's really, those things are important. I don't think I would have, in terms of back to the VA conversation, if I wouldn't have had the experience from my father, I don't think I would have tied the two, but it was something that came like a light to me. It was just, this is not for you. And I didn't realize that until I had to, you know, the burden of going through that whole process. This is really for your family to take care of. Think about it as when you do financial planning, one of the areas is insurance and how much it's really about protecting. So think about it. If you think about it in that way, then why would you, if having that possibility why would anybody walk away from that possibility of adding more protection to their family? I think almost, you know, I'm just going to call it out like it is. It might be almost irresponsible, right? It's just really,
that is exactly what it is. That is exactly what it is, Jay. It's irresponsible. And you're spot on about the insurance. And the thing I'll add about tying insurance to the VA benefit process is, you know, we were fortunate when we're on active duty to have the SGLI, you know, benefit, right? You know, listen, that ends when you get out of the military, right? So you have to replace that with something. And to not do that is absolutely irresponsible to your family. Now, here's another nugget, though, that I've learned over the last 60 to 90 days. Replace that insurance before you get your VA compensation decision, because your actual cost of insurance will go up if you get a VA rating, right? And it could be 30%, it could be 100%. But the lesson learned here that I've learned now over, you know, just being in this space for the past year is replace the insurance and put that in place before you get your VA rating, because you're going to actually save yourself money in terms of insurance premiums, right? So just again, I didn't know this.
It's part, yeah, that's all part of the,
you know.
I would say that's all part of the transition piece, right? And one of the other areas that maybe that actually you brought up an area that probably I could have done better, and we're going through the process of fixing it's, you know, we always think about one particular insurance company. I won't mention the name, but everybody that's in the military knows what we're talking about. But insurance is such a regulated industry that you can go and do that. I think the point is you need to take up all aspects of your life and making sure that as you transition to the new era in which you have certain protections because you were part of the military, SGLI, whatever it was, medical, etc. You need to take a look at those things and see, okay, how they transition on the other end. Yep. And some of those will be part. That's when we got start talking about understanding what a compensation package is when you go and work into another company. If you go and work as a 1099, which is by yourself, then you assume a lot of those. If you go and work with a great company like I work, where they take care of that, and then maybe you don't need TRICARE or any of those things.
Right.
But you need to understand all of those areas. And oh, by the way, this is where your spouse comes into play, because they're affected by it. But there's, right now we're in such a competitive environment that it's not only just the money or the bonuses or the actual, it's really the rest of the things that are coming to that the companies want to be competitive. And because they want the good talent to stay with them, because it takes a while for a company to transition. But if you don't understand what you're asking for, because it was always, it was always there, you really didn't think about it, or you didn't really put much thought in terms of how that was going to transition, then you might be losing on something there. So that's a really great point. So that's why I look at the VA and whatever insurance and all the things. The mission is transition, and again, you got to take the time to think and understand it and reflect and make decisions eyes wide open as you go forward. That way, you're not surprised by the answer when you get on the other side.
Jay, you mentioned something else, and it kind of leads me into the next question. I think it's a really valuable point you made, and that's looking at you're interviewing the company. The company's not just interviewing you, and you're looking at the culture. You're looking at the values of the company, right? You want to make sure there's a good cultural and values fit. So you went to work for Worldwide Technology after you retired, and you've been working with them. Geez, it's almost 11 years now, right? Which, from my experience, and Lee mentioned this in the intro, that is very, very uncommon. For someone like you, like me, like a lot of us who, maybe a little bit more senior as an NCO and officer, it is very common to change jobs 3-4 times in an 18 to 36 month period. That's very common. So to be with the same company for 11 years is very uncommon. So I would love for you to share with the audience how you chose Worldwide Technology, and what has motivated you and inspired you to stay with them for as long as you have.
I thank you for the opportunity. I like to talk about Worldwide Technology because I think it's a great place to work, and it's probably one. And actually, for the last 10 years, has been on the great places to work from Force magazine. So it's number one. So it go back to the preparation piece, right? If you take the time to prepare and assess and think and really reflect on the things that you want, then you figure out entrepreneurship, you figure out that core values is important. For most veterans, that's actually the one thing, right? And for most people want to be in a place where they find meaning, and they can, and they know, people know who they are, they find meaning in what they do, and they're able to assess how they're doing in their job, right? Either by by good leadership, right? I think my journey to Worldwide Technology was, I was about to sign with another company after I took 4 months of transition time between my retirement time and the time I went to Worldwide Technology. This is why I always say take time, because what happens, and you see this all the time, is we're such a go-getter that we're worried about, hey, well, how are we going to replace this, and not preparing. I always say, hey, everybody gets out. So whether you're 1 year out from retirement or 5 years out from retirement, everybody gets out. Either you tell them you're getting out, or they tell you you're getting out, or you die, right? Custer's not around, MacArthur's not around, those three things will happen. Eventually, everybody will leave the military. So it's something that's going to become inevitable. So stop thinking that this is going to you're going to be doing this forever. Start thinking that there will be a transition time. So you need to think through this process. But so I took 4 months off, and I was then ready to sign with another company to do Latin America, which I was excited for. And then all of a sudden, a member of the 112, an old warrant officer, called me up and said, "Hey, Jay, I understand you're looking." He said, "Yeah, I am." And he said, "Don't sign anything right now." I said, "Well, hey, I gotta feed the family, He said, "Well, trust me, somebody will call you." Well, I've trusted you with my life, so one of those things that it's a buddy calling on the other end. He said, "But I'll wait." I said, "Okay, somebody will call you within 2 hours." So they called me within 2 hours. They flew me the next day to St. Louis. I had the opportunity to meet Dave Stewart, which is again, it was a very special interview, because all the things that I was looking for in a company, the core values, the culture, it was a very different very different interview, right? And I've been in much, how faith is important to me. We've been much prayer for this. I felt that it was really an answer to prayer. I only had one question about Dave Stewart. He's the owner of the company, and it said in his book, he wrote a book on doing business by the good book, and I only had one question for him. In his book, he had written that the worldwide technology was his ministry. So the only question I had for him was, is this still your ministry? Because he came out and was just, he didn't even have to answer. I just saw the look in his face. That was really all I needed to hear. And that's how I joined Worldwide Technology, right? When I was interviewing with the process, I knew that this is a place where I can be with, I can learn. There were people that have teachable hearts, and I really to teach me the things of the business. I think one of the things that we make a mistake is that we don't take the time to define the difference between a large company, a big company, a privately held company, or a publicly held company, whether you are an original equipment manufacturer, if you're in technology, both of us have been in technology, whether they're product based or they're service based, whether they're governmental, they're governments from contract. Understanding all of that, it takes time because it's a language and not necessarily is done. But I think that, again, back to the time piece, I think that was critical. And I was in a better position to sit down with Worldwide Technology to really make sure that what I was bringing was what they needed, and I was able to grow. So I was able to see the growth of the company align with my own.
So listen, a couple things I want to point out to the audience that you mentioned here. So, because I think these are important questions that you have to ask yourself as you prepare for transition, right? First is, do you want to go back into the government, or do you want to go into the private sector, right? And then if you choose to go into the private sector like you did, then you have a couple options, right? Do you want to work for a small company? Do you want to work for a mid-sized company? Do you want to work for a large company? And every one of them has their benefits. Every one of them has their drawbacks, right? But I think that's an important question for you to ask and understand what the implications are so that you're making an informed decision, right? The other thing is another great set of criteria is it a service company? Is it a product company? Right. That's a great point, right? Because so your responsibilities are very different in each of those kinds of companies, right? And then what is your role going to be? You did business development. You also did systems engineering, and they have two very different and distinct responsibilities, right? And so, do you want to work in a staff-like position? Maybe you have an HR background or a recruiting background, and so it might be more suitable for you to go work on the HR team of a company or the recruiting team of a company. Maybe you prefer to be more operationally focused and profit and loss focused, right? So now you're managing projects, you're managing project teams, you're managing portfolios of project teams, which can be very profitable, but also brings on a different set of responsibilities and requirements that you may or may not want to take on those responsibilities, right? But those are all the kinds of questions that you kind of need to think through and answer for yourself. And you said this earlier, is seek out people who maybe have done this before and get some advice and guidance and mentoring from them, because they're already doing those kinds of things. And those are the people who will be able to advise you of what the benefits or what some of the drawbacks are of those kinds of positions, right? But by doing that, by having those conversations, and Lee and I have been in enough of these, it's commonly called having a cup of coffee with someone, right? We've had people have had 100 cups of coffee with people, 200 cups of coffee, 400 cups of coffee. The more time you take to seek out information that will help you make a more informed, better decision, then you're going to end up like Jay, picking the right company and being with them for 11 years instead of transitioning not only from the military to the private sector, but transitioning from company to company to company in 18 to 36 months.
I was just going to say, it's not even limited to just military, right? In sports, we do this. The best coaches I know have coffee with other coaches, even competing coaches we compete against. So that is one of the themes from the show, Howie, is that just sitting down and having coffee with someone for anything is beneficial. Parenting. I mean, you could. We don't talk enough as it is. That's the thing. Is there's a good bet This is what I always say to people, how you'll like this. There's a good bet, whatever you're thinking, whatever you want to learn, someone has already done it. And if they haven't, make a business because you're going to be a millionaire. All right. That's what I always say, right? There's a good bet. Parenting, transitioning, sports, business, doesn't matter. We don't talk enough to each other. There are people out there with information. That's one of the reasons we're doing this show, this show is a cup of coffee, right? Sometimes 5 in one episode, depending on who we're talking to, but it's always a good cup of coffee.
I like the cup of coffee analogy, because actually I remember back transition, there was a good mentor of mine that we sat multiple times throughout the whole process, and I would get an offering and he would go, hey, just take let's have a cup of coffee, let's talk over this. It's really, again, back to thinking and understanding and reflecting, and then in order to make an informed decision. I think as you go through this process, people then ask themselves, so where do I find this information? Well, companies publish who their mission and their vision are and what they do, and it's publicly available, and you can have that. You can ask other people that work there. You got to work with people that you like. So there's a lot of information, but all of that takes time for you to be able to do so, right? And it's amazing to me, but it doesn't. I think, and this is just, it doesn't make a lot of sense to go and I can find all the missions and visions and you got to be able, and core values of the company, because they all got them posted all over. But you got to be able to spend some time with them so that to see if they're actually reflected on the workforce, right? And this is what was very different about Worldwide Technology, right? They said that really the core values and the culture was really reflected on the people that I was talking. They, my first interview was when I flew into St. Louis, was very different. They say, hey, just walk around and ask. What, no, just ask how long. And now I started asking, how long you been here? 9. How long you been here? 15. How long you been here? 12. Wow. How long you? And she's go, wait a minute, that's very different than all the places that I've been in, which the turnover rate they're very different. And then you start looking at what they do. But again, if they haven't spent time finding out what your own personal mission is, what your own vision is for your life, for what your own core values, and you don't know able to does your mission, your own vision of yourself, your own mission vision and mission for yourself, and the core values that you have, do they align with that? You got to have that work beforehand. And I think this is one thing about the military, right, that we do. So we go in and we talked about the Army core values, and we live them and all that. And we think, okay, we transition over, take some of those and use them as a starting point. They might change across the board. I mean, this is your permission to play. Lencioni talks about that. But just make sure you define what they are. Define what your own vision, success. I know it sounds trivial, but it's really true. What's somebody going to say if you die today? Right? What are they? What are they going to write on that obituary? Right? And what do you want people to write? So you got to, if you want them to write nice things or good things or productive, then you got to work towards those things across to make that happen. But again, back to your mission and vision. If you know what your own personal mission is and what you're supposed to do, then and what your core values are, then when you see core values of the company, not only they have them written, but as they're reflected on the particular workforce, then that is start to make a match.
Right.
And I think that's what made the difference. Worldwide Technology is a really great place to work, and it's because of the people. Our mission is to be a profitable growth company that's a fun place to work for all. Right. When you start looking at those things, that makes a difference. I have the privilege of running what we call the exercise, the employee resource group for veterans, right? So I run the veterans group. I'm privileged to run that organization. And we've been running that. So when all of this D&I stuff started coming out, all we did was codify our core values and our culture and operating business, and we already had places where people can come and listen and learn. You want to know what a veteran is supposed to look like? Or feels like or goes through, come to the veterans group, and it's open to all. You don't have to be a veteran to be part of the what we call the ERG. So that makes a difference, and that's part of the core values and the culture of a company. That's what I think makes Worldwide Technology a very fun place to work for all. And if I've told Jim Cavanaugh, the CEO, is that this is the great, short of wearing the uniform, this is as good as it gets. And that's another point. Let's recognize the fact that there's nothing that's going to compare to us wearing the nation's cloth and being with service. I mean, it is a very the professional arms, the ability to serve for your country. That is a very unique thing that doesn't compare to anything else. So I recognize that that was a phase in your life. Recognize that you honorable service, and recognize that there's a lot of things that you can bring into the future, but recognize that nothing is going to compare to that time in life. But there are other good things and other things that you could still contribute. You talk about my transition from being business development to director of engineering services to director of engineering management, and then I'm back to being a director of business development. The common thing through that is leadership. The common thing is being able to understand what the mission is, bring the people, provide them the resources, and just let them do and get out of the way and let them perform well, right? Those are things that you as a veteran, again, you need to understand what is it that you bring to the table to add value. And don't confuse doing transactions with value. What is the other things that you bring to the table that are associated with that? And you can only do that if you have spent some time looking at yourself and doing some introspective work, which is hard for military people, because you got to use pronouns like, I would like to do X. That's a hard thing for veterans to do. Me, right? That's a hard pronoun for us to use. But every once in a while, you owe it to the people you serve, your family, and other people to do that type of work, because that way you bring the best you that God made you to be.
Hey, I want to pick up on something that I think is critically important. And again, I've been in this space now for I guess a little over a year. It's almost going on a year and a half, right? And I will tell you what I'm finding is the thing that veterans are challenged with when they exit the military, and again, it's whether it's 4 years, 14 years, 24 years, 34 years, it's irrelevant, is, and you hit the nail on the head, Jay. When you're in uniform, you're part of a community, you're part of a tribe, right? And you associate with that community, you associate with that tribe. When you're in uniform, you have a sense of purpose, right? And the challenge veterans face, and again, I don't care whether you're a first termer or you're retiring as a general officer, is you lose that sense of community and you lose that sense of purpose. Now, if you replace them, you're probably going to be okay. And whether you're replacing them with one community, two communities, five communities, it doesn't matter. But if you're replacing that community of being in the military with other communities, and you're replacing that sense of purpose with another or several other senses of purpose, you're probably going to be okay. It's when you don't, that's when you have an issue, right? And so what you did was you found an organization that operated by according to the same cultural and value-based principles that you operated by. And so you were able to replace that sense of community with your workplace and that sense of purpose with what you're doing and serving others. And that's why you had a successful transition, right? Or at least that's why you had yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. Again, back to my own, we started doing some math in terms of worldwide technology. How many people are veterans, right? Come to find out, more than 7% of the people that work in worldwide technology are veterans. Inside the federal sector alone, it's probably a lot higher. And a lot of that has to do is because that type of the core values and the culture attract people like that, attract people that come from the service, from all services, right?
Yeah.
And it's important to be very qualitative. I think I like what you said about tribes, and you lose the tribe. And I mean, there's still other ways to serve, right? There's still other ways to be of impact. You and I belong to associations that still help foment the story and get together. But it's just more than just getting together and having a cup of coffee or several beers over that and tell war stories. No, it's just significance is, okay, how do we help the people there that need help, right? How do we help with those who have not had the mentorship across the board that they need to? How do we promote the quality of the men and women that have served and bring that up to the forefront, so then they can make a decision. They still have to perform, right? So being part of these groups and replacing them with the right groups, I would say, is that making sure that it just continues to add the significance into your life. But it's Ron, again, we join these groups and we do these things, especially the associations that we have, is because we want to bring significance We want to make an impact to other people that are not behind our. So we can continue to do some work. Right, we might have taken the uniform off, but we're still soldiers, and we're soldiers for life. Right, that doesn't take that away. Right, I might not fit in my uniform not these days, and I got to work on that because my son is getting commissioned here in not this May, next May. So I got to work on that to make sure I don't none of those buttons pop off. But it just, we still serve, and you got to find those groups and maybe replace them. And it can be a church organization. It can be,
Exactly.
you just got to find different
That's
areas in
exactly
your
right.
life that you continue to be a service.
You got to find that community for sure. That seems to be a reoccurring theme on the show. And just to rewind back to the interview process, Jay, one thing I want to reiterate to everybody listening is an interview is a two-way process. You are interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you, and any company worth its salt will, as you said, almost ask you to do that. You should have questions, you should have thoughts, and you should be able to speak to people that work at a company to see if you want to work there. And if a company's not interested in you doing that, it is probably not going to be a good fit. I'm not going to lie to you. It's just in my experience, right? So, Jay, I want to ask you this too. If we were advising someone transitioning that's interested in going into government contracting, you've mentioned that a few times, you've kind of tapped on it. What advice do you have for them for that specific trajectory?
Well, if you want to go into government contract, understand, number one, if you're going to be tied to the contract there, you need to understand the contract that you're tied to. The contracts do one thing, they end. All of them end. All of them have to be recompeted. So understand that if you're going to be part of that, or what is the expectation. And I tell everybody, whether you go as a government contract, well, I don't want to be in sales. Well, I don't want to be, well, I'm telling you something. I don't care what your name or your job title says. Everybody that's on this side of the fence, it's in sales.
Yeah.
All you're talking about is all you're talking is trying to define how far from the point of sales you are and how much risk are you willing to take. The closer to the point of sale you are, the higher the risk, but the higher the reward. The farther away, the less of the risk, but less of the reward. And also need to understand that companies go through ups and downs, just like anything else. You need to understand that's part of the cycle. We probably worldwide is just like any other company. When I joined, it was $4.5 billion. Now it's $14 billion in revenue. That's that 10-year growth experience. That's uncommon for a company. But we've had you have your ups and downs. But even through the COVID crisis, we never let anybody lay down. That is uncommon for a particular company, right? But understand that if you're going for a contract work, understand that all contracts do one thing: they end. They have to be recompeted. And what are they bringing you for to do, right? Understand that if they're hiring you for your Rolodex, then you probably need to do some little internal soul searching and see, okay, that Rolodex after 3 years is probably no good, right? Understand that if you're bringing in for specific skill sets, then okay, that's great, but skill sets have to be updated, right? So if I don't care if you're into technology, particular technology, and technology evolves every 18 months, that's Moore's law. Are they going to give you the time to do and evolve? Or are you going to spend 40, 60, 80 hours a week in this contract with no particular growth and no. If all you're doing is doing a butt in a seat, and if that's what you want to do, again, it's a choice. But understand that, right? It's understand the operational environment and operate with it. All contracts inside a government end. Now, if you're coming in as what we call Howie, I don't know how you got, but I would call it a strategic hire, meaning that you have multiple contracts across the board, and you're running a line of business. Then understand that you're in sales, and it's about keeping the line of business, adding value to the contract, because again, it's your customer's customer, right? Who are they serving, right? You might be on a contract for the CIO D6 or the Army or whatever, but it's really they're serving the United States Army, the guy on the ground. How's that relevancy? You need to make sure that you tie that relevant, and that's what you're bringing into the table. So when you come into government contract work, there's different ways to do it. You're either tied directly to contract, you're tied to multiple contracts, which is probably better in terms of that, or you're tied to a line of business that has multiple contracts that works with the federal government.
Yeah, so I'm going to expand on this a little bit because I will tell you, and I'm going to share a little bit about how I screwed up. is number one, because I went into government contracting right out of retirement, and I had no idea about any way to run a business, right? None, nada, right? So the first thing I think you need to understand is you are now in a business that is there to drive revenue and make profit and make money. That is the bottom freaking line. Okay. Now, some companies will take care of their people while doing it. Others will be ruthless and all they care about is the profit. And that's where you got to make a good choice about who you go to work for. But you need to understand one thing. You are there to help them make money. And if you're there, you are costing them money, right? Because they have to pay your salary, they have to pay your benefits, right? So you're costing them money. And so you have to make them more money than you're costing them. That's just the way you need to look at this, right? And in the Army or the Navy or the Marine Corps, pick a service, right? We didn't operate that way. We were given a budget. We were given all the resources, generally all the resources we needed, time, people, money, and equipment, and we had to manage that. Well, now, you have to actually make the money to cover all those costs, right? So that's the first thing. The second is, and Jay is exactly right. If you're going into government contracting, whether you're going in to work on a contract or to project manage a contract or a project or a portfolio, it's going to have a base year, right? Let's just say you win a contract that's 5 years, right? The base year is the first year. And you'll normally you think, well, I have 4 more years because I just won a 5-year contract. Well, guess what? The client has a vote, right? After that base year, they choose to extend you for the next an option year, right? And if you're performing well and you're adding value and you're doing what they hired you to do, chances are they'll execute the option year, right? And then you go into the end of the second year, and guess what? They can choose to hire you again and execute the next option year, or they could choose not to. And oh, by the way, if you're not performing during the base year or you're not performing during an option year, guess what? They can terminate the contract anytime they want if they have cause, right? So you just need to understand some of these things, which I did not understand at all. Now, let's talk about what Jay just described about recompeting for the work. So now you've won a contract of base plus 4 option years. You've executed on all 5 years, and the client still needs that work done, right? You have to now compete for that work, even though you just did it for 5 years, and maybe you did it very well. The way the government contracting system works, the way the federal acquisition regulation system works, is you have to compete for that work, even though you did it successfully for 5 years. And that's a whole nother ball game right there, right? That I had no clue about proposal management, capture management, managing the client expectations and how to best position yourself to recompete and win the new contract, right? So listen, my point here is I was on my ass for 8 to 10 months. I was very used to, and I'm sure Jay will tell you the same thing, when we were in uniform, whether you've been in that organization before or not, you're very used to coming into a unit, and within a very short period of time, you're used to adding value. And I was with this company, Morgan Franklin, which was a great company, but I was adding zero value for 8 to 10 months. And I was frustrated beyond any kind of explanation. And I was probably more stressed in those 8 to 10 months than in anything I ever did in uniform, to include leading troops in combat. That's how much stress I put on myself. And I was having a very, very tough time. So my point here is that if you are going to go into a field, whether it's government contract or another, take the time to find people who are doing those things, have those cups of coffee, have what we call informational interviews, learn how you need to better prepare yourself, how you need to better educate yourself, so that when you go in, you don't have such a steep learning curve like I had. Because I'll tell you, thankfully, I worked for 2 incredible leaders who hired a consultant who spent 3 months with me to teach me all the things I did not know. And they did not have to do that. There are some companies that would have just put more pressure on me, more stress on me, and then probably would have just cut me loose. They did not do that. They actually invested more in me.
I think that's a really, really good point. Good point. One, understanding the financials, right? Everything, at the end of the day, lining up to the mission. Profitable growth company is a fun place to work for all. The only reason you're able to be a fun place to work for all is because you're profitable and you're growing. Understand that that's the way that works on the outside world. Understanding that that what you just talked about when you're interviewing, this is you want to probably they're going to ask what kind of questions or what do you want to do? That'll be the typical question that most people. Well, I want to lead people, inspire people. Yeah, and do all the things they do. That the standard answer is yeah, you and 100 other people that are retiring as colonel. You what do you bring to the table that's different, right? And then understand that when you're interviewing, if you've done the work, when you say capture, it reminds me of my first interview. When I went to my first interview, and I was not prepared, and I was, one of those that it was like 2 weeks into my first. They say, hey, come on over, we want to talk to you. I say, yeah. I walked in, and I went in there for a business development piece, so I was prepared kind of for that, right? I'm still defining terms, understanding that. So they start talking to me about capture, because that's what the position really was. The other person didn't tell me. So I say, well, the only capture I know is about let's go capture the bad guy. Let's go to the so I
can lead a raid. I can lead a raid.
I'll put that together. I have all the comps for that.
I'll put the machine gun over here. And
I literally, it's like, and when they start laughing, but it was, I really, their concepts, right, associated with that. That's a very specific skill set that you bring over time, Shipley process and all these things. But it's again, if you're not prepared for that, the other piece is when you're interviewing, it's okay. What is most companies, they understand they want to retain talent, and this just so you bring it, the investment that they did from the consultants to bring you up to speed. You need to ask the question, either they have that formally or informally. Right. You need to be transparent. Understand they know that there's some things that you still have to learn. And actually it's okay for you to say that. I think it's okay. Hey, there's some areas that I'm still learning. I need to learn the profit and loss thing. I just need to, I think I got a concept about it, but how is there opportunities for me to learn, or at least while you're having conversations with the people that are hiring managers that have these responsibilities for profit and loss centers, then you need to, does he have the heart of a teacher? And also, do you have a teachable heart? Are you willing to learn, right?
Great point.
Are you willing, because as veterans, we go in with, okay, here we go. Are you willing? Are you, humble? You have the humility to understand that there's a lot of things that you just don't understand, and it's okay. But nobody's going to beat you at the hard work that you're prepared to learn right. Those things. So that's a couple of key important points there, in terms of understanding government work as it comes down to it.
Cool.
I was listening to you guys talk with my mic off because it was so informative. But yeah, Jay, the thing about learning, and Howie said this too, you have to drop that ego if you have any. There is not a position on the planet where you don't have to learn something. And even when you know it, you still should be yearning to learn, right? And I talk about this in sports all the time with coaching. There is no coach that's got it. I always say, and you can apply this to the military, good coaches know everything, great coaches know nothing. Right. So that search for yearning to learn should always be there. So Howie, I think you have the next question, bud.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And listen, I'm 65 years old, man. Just went on Medicare, and you know what? I'm learning every day, man. And I love it. I absolutely love it, man. It keeps me smiling and keeps me happy, keeps me challenged. So I don't think it can ever stop learning.
We talked about that yesterday, Howie, right? You barring mental issues, you can learn till you die.
Yeah, and I will.
Yeah.
I will.
And I'm not 65 yet. I just want everybody to know that listening.
And Lee is not my son.
Howie officially declares himself the oldest person in this interview. But I'll be reaching out to you for that cup of coffee, because I'm almost there, brother.
Oh, buddy, let me
need
tell you
to
something.
get
You're in
that
for a rude
transition,
freaking awakening, man.
You know,
and
Howie.
and and and,
Go
and
ahead, Jay.
again, we're talking about being lifelong learners, right? Being lifelong learners, right? And Lee, I think that's you addressed something in the room. Man, the ego, and we have it. I mean, airborne, do the whole thing, and then yeah, I serve, and just it's okay, man. Just be humble, understand that there's a whole another great piece of advice is just humble yourself and just understand that there's a lot of things to learn, and there will be but you got to have the heart to be able to learn. The whole transition from military TRICARE to Medicare and all those things, that's another learning period, just no different than the transition from military healthcare system to VA. That is an important thing, lifelong learning, and you got to be able to take the time and have the discipline and the rigor to be able to do that. Use the things that have got you there to continue to get you to where you need to be, right? I've always said, I don't think I'm going to retire. I'm not going to retire. I'm just going to be able to have the opportunity to go to other places and do other things to continue to serve, right? It just, there might not be a paycheck. It might be to the point, hopefully, where we get to that I'm self-employed and be able to have more opportunities to share knowledge and gain knowledge. Because that's, we talk about mentors and mentees, Howie. People, if you're a mentor, you're a mentor-mentee relative. It's a two-way street. The mentor's learning just as much as the mentee is learning.
True. That is
it's just that they have the difference is that they both have made a commitment to each other to spend time over cups of coffee to be able to share knowledge.
But it's a mindset. It's a mindset. I want to tap on that real quick, Howie. It is a mindset you have to have, right? If you go into any situation of, I know more than this person, you're shortchanging yourself and the other person. And I'll give a metaphor again, just from outside the military, because it could give some perspective. Because again, I may have been a military spouse, but I've been in the professional realm, for most of my life now. And I remember in sports, when I was younger, I always had this urge to tell people, oh, I worked at the National Hockey League. I worked for the New York Rangers. I would want to tell people that. And I was young and I understood it because I felt that qualified me in some way, but it was really my ego talking. And what happened is, as I get older, I don't even volunteer that information unless it's necessary, right? Or it comes up in conversation. So the metaphor is this. We've all been to professional sporting events. Hopefully you've been to something. And there's always the guy or the woman in the crowd that just is taught, I know everything about this team. Let me tell you everything about this team. And where I'm going with this, like, I've worked in the game, right? I don't feel the need to tell people that. It's when it's relevant and it needs to come up. That's when my experience will come out, but I don't have to identify through that. Now, with that said, anybody that served, you've earned every title that you have. You should identify with your service in some form. And when you're together, I love seeing military veterans and people come together because they brighten up, right? But when you're out there in the private sector, know that you have this experience and know that you have a hell of a skill set and being a team player and understanding what a mission is. But that doesn't have to be the only thing about you, right? When you're, I did this, I did that. Apply it. Learn from each other. You'll learn as much from the private sector as you learn in the military, and they should be learning from you. Last thing I'll say, Howie, before I jump back to you, the world needs leaders. The world needs team players. If you are a veteran, you have a massive skill set that the world needs right now. All right. As Howie alluded to, when you go to a job, and Jay, I'm so happy that you found a place that's kind of not like this, right? It is profit first, bottom line thinking at most places. It is not a team first mentality. And in my opinion, that is incorrect. Businesses that take a team first mentality succeed, right? I proudly am part of one, right? But you want to make sure that you're bringing that to the table as someone that has been in the military, that has served, is like, I understand what it is to follow a mission. I understand what it is to be part of a team. Going back to what you said earlier, Jay, people would be shocked, people listening, shocked if you went to a business and said, hey, what's your mission? How few people could give you an answer to that question. You go to any private business and say, hey, what's the mission here to the employees? You'll be shocked how many people can't answer that question. Talking to business owners too right now, right? If you don't have that mission,
and it's amazing because
yeah, go ahead.
And it's amazing because when we were in the military, one of the things is what's the mission of this unit? You immediately knew exactly what
you
your
had
mission
to.
is. When you were a company commander, you knew exactly the mission. So why is it that we don't take that knowledge that we have and say, okay, let me find out, and more importantly, find out what your mission is. I want to tap into something you said, Leah, and I think this is absolutely right. I think many of us veterans go through when we go through a transition is we made a mistake, and I'll call it a mistake, that we defined ourselves by the uniform we wear and not what we brought into the uniform. And I think that's the biggest thing, right? So the uniform did not define Jay Santiago. It took me a while to understand that. Jay Santiago was chose to serve and was able to serve because not everybody can serve. But the uniform did not define me. But somewhere in that process of 25 plus years, you go through that from private to colonel, right? You go through that process, and next thing you know, you let the uniform define you. You are the job define, no different than the job define you, but you are. No, there are skills and talents that I need to make sure that, and this is why, again, taking the time to understand what those things that make you unique. Lee, you're Lee Elias. I cannot replace you. You cannot replace me. I cannot replace Howie. I can only be the best Jay that Jay the God made Jay to be. And it's the same thing with you. Everybody has something to contribute, and if I'm willing to learn from where you've been and appreciate your background, and I love when you bring the sports analogies because I think it's relevant to what we're trying to do. If all we do here in this particular forum is talk about all the great things that we did in the military, but not related to the future or other areas of our lives, then we miss the point. We don't do any. We're not serving the people that we want to serve because they have to understand that it was not the uniform that made you. It was what you brought into the uniform that made that career successful. Okay, and it's not what you wore in the uniform, when you played hockey, right? Or the C's there. It's what you brought into the.
Lee, we were just talking about that before the episode, right?
Jay,
that's exactly what we were just talking about.
I was talking before the episode.
Jay, before we came on to the episode.
Yeah, I was mentioning this to Howie. That you go ahead, Jay. Apologies.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that if we're doing the analogy, I told Howie, I remember the day, I remember the moment that I realized that I don't have to play hockey. I'm choosing to do this. Right. And that was an eye-opening thing. I said, I identified my self-worth and my happiness through a game. And that was incorrect thinking. And again, if we're applying this to the military, don't identify your self-worth and happiness to the uniform alone. It is a major accomplishment and it's a major deal that you've done that, but it's not you, right? And when I realized I choose to play hockey, it was like an explosion. I realized, man, I can apply, to your point, Jay, I can apply the work ethic that I've been putting into this game, which was immense amount of time, effort, pain, all the stuff I put into that game. I can apply it to other things. I can apply it to school. I can apply it to writing, podcasting, business. And the world exploded. It was like, wow, I can do all this stuff. So from where I sit as a transitioning military person, to your point, Jay, you have some skill sets you can apply anywhere, right? But you got to be realistic about where you're going. You don't walk in blind. Yeah, I can't walk into a business and be like, I'm a hockey player, right? Yeah. I had to walk in and say, I have these skill sets.
Yeah, or great. Even if you decide to stay in that particular arena, right? You got to be able to still identify what brings Lee Elias into what is the value that you bring. Right, the unique, actually, I'm going to be very precise about this, is the unique value that Lee Elias brings, or Howie Cohen or Jay Santiago brings, and that takes time.
Yeah,
that it doesn't happen overnight.
And it may change.
You got to be able to again, and it changes over time. Because you add more knowledge, you have more experience over time, but it doesn't change who you are in terms of you're not defined by. As much as I love worldwide technology, I'm not defined by worldwide technology in the job that I do.
Right.
I love being in this place because it's my own personal mission is aligned with the mission of the company. But eventually, I know that will end, and I am not. As much as in that process. Understanding. Eventually, I'll be like Howie in Medicare or whatever, or 65.
He gets diner discounts now, Jay. He can go to a diner, and there's a menu just for him. And look, just one last metaphor on your point. When I was in my early 20s, I was a speedy, fast power forward. In athletic years, I'm old now. That's not my game anymore, and I had to transition. I can't walk into the game going, I'm going to be the fastest guy on the ice anymore because I'm not. right? I got to play the game now that I am excelling at. Like you said, that makes me unique. So, and that can be a wonderful process if you open yourself up to it. It doesn't have to be scary at all, right? But I think that's just a phenomenal point that you made. You know, look, here's the deal, everybody. I'll tell you right now what my mission is every day. This is how I win every day. When I come home at night, my kids know I love them, and they know that I'm sorry, and I know they love me. If I get that at the end of the day, I did a good job today, no matter what else is going on. That's my mission. That's the most important thing. That's how I win every day, right? It has nothing to do with how well my businesses are doing, how well a podcast I did. I want to excel at all of those things. But the only thing I care about is making sure that my kids know I love them and I know they love me. That's my goal every day, right? And it's a worthy one. I have no problem saying that, right? So if you're out there, you know, especially transitioning, and we talked about this whole episode, you do, and you have to continue to think of your family, right? You have to. You know, I wanted to say this earlier. We've written the intro to this show over many times. Right. And I remember in the beginning how it was kind of very focused on just transitioning military. And then we realized, wow, we got to add in the spouses and the families and the kids because they're transitioning too. Right. And then the business owner, like this transition is not limited to one person. And I'm not making the assumption that anybody listening to this feels that way. But transition is a major undertaking by really everyone involved in your life. Right. And to go from a Friday to a Monday thinking you're just going to jump into it is insane. It's insane, right? So
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not trying to digress away.
If you identify, this is what we're talking about here. People talk about identity. That's one of those terms that's being thrown out all over the place a lot of times. You know, even my background doesn't make me who I am, right? And from my perspective, like faith is important to me. So it's who I am before God, right? And who He made me unique in His image, and that makes a difference, and that helps me with a bunch of things in terms of resilience and issues right across the board, and overcome all those things. But it's not defined by the uniform, and it took me a while to get through that. I said, man, I'm not defined by the uniform. I had to change the mindset about that. Right. I'm not defined by my title. I'm not big into titles, but not defined by the title. I know it helps open doors and things like that. It's just part of the reality here, but it's not who I am, right? It's not, you know, when you talk about your kids, I applaud that, right? Your spouse too. Everybody is transitioning through the process, and understand that the world that you're in, you're going to have an influence over that. As a matter of fact, that's the definition in my mind of leadership. Leadership is about influence. And if you're transitioning, guess what you're going to influence? The people that are closest to you first. Right. So it's important. It should be the motivator to get up and say, let me do these things right. Let me apply the rigor and the discipline and the associated that I need to be successful about these things, because I know I have the tools to. And it's up to me to define what I bring for value. It's not up to the company that I'm interviewing. That's my job. My job is to figure out if my values are aligning with theirs, if I'm able to grow with that particular company. And again, I want to make this point. I found out that being a profitable growth company, that's a fun place to work, right? Like Worldwide Technology, and I keep going back to my company because I love it, right? It might be unique, but there are other companies out there that are in the same place. It's up to you to figure that out of what you want to do. Right. And again, once you transition, there's a lot of choices. You just need to put the legwork associated with that to be able to make a difference, and you can continue to make a difference. Nonprofits. I mean, what you guys are doing. I mean, a lot of the things that make a difference in people's lives, right? Like you said, my father, when you said that, find out, everything that people are doing, and somebody's done it before. My father used to say that about everything is written, the same thing. So I kind of relate to that. It's like, if not, figure it out and you'll make money because you'll be the first one to write it. No, that's not true, right? There's a lot of information out there, sometimes too much. But that's where the discernment, right? The wisdom and discernment, having that cup of coffee that we just talked about. Understand that it's a process, but we're so used to the instant. This takes time. What we're talking about takes time. It's about life, and life is a journey, right? And hopefully the destination it's a good one, right? But life is a journey. Life is a journey.
So Jay, in the interest of time, I'm going to actually shift to the last question, because I think this is, I really am interested in your thoughts on this. So,
but before you do that, Howie,
what's that?
For your favorite part of the show? You almost
very cool.
So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Howie. Actually,
no,
I did mean to cut you off. So Jay, the way the show, I don't know if you listen to the show, but I give all of our guests a title of a book that if you were going to write a book, throughout the episode, I come up with some titles for you based on the conversation, right? So if Jay Santiago was going to write a book, I got three titles here. They're actually all not funny, Howie, but they're very good. One of them, well, actually, one is funny. Okay, one of them is, this is just a quote you said that I haven't heard anybody say on the show, but I love that you said the mission is the transition, or the mission is transition. That would be a really good book title for you, and it's true. I never heard any of our guests how we refer to it as a mission, but I can see how that would be very beneficial.
Hey, Lee, we might have to use that for our book.
Yeah, so we'll give credit to you, Jay. Sorry, we're taking that one. Yeah, that's gonna be the other one. Is another thing you said. I've never heard this before, and you said it literally in the first minute of the show. I have had a lot of veterans say to me that they get uncomfortable when people say thank you for your service, right? I've even had some vets say, hey, just say thank you for volunteering, but I've never heard a veteran say, well, the way you respond to that is to say you're worth it. That's another book title right there. You're worth it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That is a brilliant response.
I love that.
And I love it too. And I'll tell you what, not only does it make that interaction make both people feel good, but it absolutely reiterates why you all do what you do, right? It's not about the recognition. You're doing it. And I talked about Howie with this yesterday. You do what you do so we don't have to think about it, right? You protect us so we don't have to think about it. But the last one, this is the one I think to make Howie laugh. Your book cover should be, I'm good at capturing the bad guy. I capture the bad guy.
How to succeed in government contracts.
Yeah, capture the bad guy. Anyway, I just
the subtitle has to be how to succeed in government contracts.
That's it. Yeah,
right?
How to capture the bad guy. A success journey in government contracting by Jay Santiago. Yeah, there you go.
I actually appreciate that, but I want to make sure that I give credit where credit is due. The first part around the mission transition, I think I got that from a book that a guy named Lieutenant Colonel Scott Mann, and you guys have probably heard about the guy, the Pineapple Task Force and stuff like that. He actually, we served together in 7th Group, so he's an exceptional. He's like, he does TED Talks, and he's able to talk without an accent. And so he's able to do a lot of things and helps a lot of people. Great American. So that's where actually years later, after I transitioned, I was reading his book, and I was like, man, there's a lot of things that I kind of did by discovery too, but he was able to put that there. And I would say that the second title, I appreciate that. It's an interesting thing. Is that I used to just say, well, thank you. I always felt odd about it, but the reality is that if we relive the life of service that we did, and how you talked about my father, my sons, right, and my brothers, that I just look around, and I'm an optimist by, you know me, Howie. I'm an optimist by trait, right? I just look around. I just take a look at it and say, what a privilege it was to serve, or it is to serve, to continue to serve in a different capacity, right? And how we help other people. So I always say, you know what? Probably it's like, you're worth it. You're worth the time we put in there. To my wife, you were worth the time. To my sons and my daughter, that you're worth the time doing it. Like you're talking about going home and going.
That was brilliant.
You're worth the time.
I love that. I really love it. I've never heard a veteran say that, and I think that a lot of veterans are looking for what is the right response when somebody says that. That is the right response.
Well, I'm going to start using it. That's for sure, Jay.
That was
I'm
awesome.
going to start using it.
Yeah. I'm not even a veteran. I like it. I'm a spouse veteran, right? No, but I love it.
Yeah. So listen, let me kind of transition to the last question, Jay, because this is really
how do you capture the bad guy? That's the last question. No, I'm just kidding, Howie. Go ahead.
So listen.
Well, I would say before I say, it's like I had the privilege. It's like I'm not a TAP guy, and that means that I was I just had the privilege and the opportunity for 20 years serve 15 years serving special operations units, and as a communications officer, I just served with a lot of very special people that really every single day, how what we talk about, they really went above and beyond, and that was just a privilege and an honor too.
Yep. And listen, man, you were one of them. Right?
Yeah.
You may have worn the cross flags and not the cross rifles or the cross arrows, but you were one of them, Jay, and never question that for a second, man. So listen, what I want to talk about now is our vision at Pivotal Moments Media is to strengthen mental fitness worldwide. And I know personally, and if I'm very candid, we all struggle with our own mental fitness to varying degrees at varying times, and some of us handle it well and some of us don't handle it well. So if you're willing to share information, I'm curious, have you had any struggles with your own mental fitness? Have you seen others struggle with their mental fitness? And if so, what have you experienced? How have you handled it? How have you helped others manage it? And what do you do to strengthen your own mental fitness, Jay?
Yeah, and thanks for a question, Howie. When I was looking at this question, this was one of those that you go back as well. Yeah, every one of us go through this process. I remember when I was retiring in 2011, it was the height of the surge in the Iraq War and in Iraq and Afghanistan, right? And I felt that when I was putting in my retirement papers, is I was leaving people behind. And we've all had people that have served. We've lost comrades, and that was a far more the whole survivor's guilt kind of thing. The bracelet that I wore, Paul Syverson, he was standing in the same place I was standing 2 weeks before, or the week before, and he was the one that got the mortar round in Balad. So I honor his memory for that. But so every one of us we just might not realize it or unable to pinpoint it. But just once I pinpointed what was bothering about putting my retirement papers and transitioning, and why, because it's still, you still think that you can continue to serve, not because you're afraid of what's ahead, it's because there's still work to be done. We're in the middle, we're still in combat. I got people that I know that are coming and going. My oldest son was getting ready to the academy, and he was filling the rank that I was, the boy that I was leaving in the ranks, and now my sons are doing that. So, vested interest personally. So you start thinking, one, now not only as a soldier but also as a father of soldiers, how that goes and how that affects you. And you got to be able to deal with it. It affects certain things. So how do I deal with it, which really is important? Well, how my faith in Jesus Christ is probably the most important thing for me. If you ever don't know anything about me, is that I believe that I believe that he's saved by his redeemed grace, and that's important, right? So the spiritual component of this is very, very important to me, and that's helped me navigate through some things in terms of significance and identity. My identity is in him, not myself. In terms of service, finding my purpose, following my purpose, and finishing my purpose. Those are things that help, that add significance to the life that I was put here. Recognizing that I am uniquely made in his image, and that I made not for self-serving purposes, but for other based services, serving others. That's an important part of who I am, my identity, and why I'm here in this earth, right? We all, it's all about of a worldview, right? It's about, we all struggle with where we come from. Are we moral, or do we have meaning? And then eventually the legacy. What legacy do we leave? And I hope that, when I'm standing before my Maker, that I honored him with the gifts and talents that he'd given me, right? How do I protect my wife and my kids? I provided for them. So that just helps me through the spirit, having a really spiritual component. I think, it's an interesting thing. We recognize the physical component, we recognize the mental component, making sure that you do the Wordle every week, or every day of the week, right? Or make sure that you don't get up to 65 and having to go to Medicare or something. No, just doing those things. But the mental and the physical, but there's a spiritual component to all of us, and that is whatever I personally find that, from my perspective, that is the most important. It drives all things, because when you're tired and you're carrying that rucksack, and eventually the mind has to kick in. Hey, you can go another 2 miles. Remember those things, and eventually. But that even the mental component is going to go away. And then it's the spiritual that's going to carry you, the physical, the mental, and the physical through all those hard times, right? And I think that's important. The other piece is, we belong to organizations that are the brotherhood and sisterhood, the being able to reach out to other people that have gone through similar trials. You're not alone. Recognizing that you're not alone. That's an important thing. recognize that there's so many resources. It's amazing to me that with all this information that's out there, all because there's a lot of information, how still people we fall through the cracks. And a lot of it is because people are just not finding their relevancy, their uniqueness, their why, their reason for why, and because they haven't had the opportunity to talk to. So, reach out to a buddy, your battle buddy. Reach out to them, have a conversation, and if they can't, then there's another buddy. You didn't go, the squad was more than five, was 5 people, or it was more than 11 people. The platoon was 40 people. Reach out to those things. Start having that cup of coffee and having a conversation. There's a lot of government resources, but at the end, it's the relationship that we find and the networks that we have, and hopefully being part of having a spiritual component, being part of an organization that can be part of something that adds significance to your life. People are not alone. But personally, I'll answer the question is that my faith in Jesus Christ was really what helped me through it, being part of a church family and being part of other organizations that make me continue to serve and serve my fellow human beings is a great thing.
So what you've done, Jay, and it's so apparent, and I've known this about you, but for our audience, is and you said this, you're not defined by the uniform. That's not your identity. You always had another community other than the Army, right? And that's your spiritual community, that's your faith and your church. And that's also gives you that other sense of purpose, right? So when you left the military and you left the military tribe and you left the military purpose, because it did not define you, you already had another community and another sense of purpose to rely on, right? And it just reinforces the need that if you don't already have something like that, then that's one of the things that transitioning veterans have to do is replace it, right? And I think that's so critical. Listen, man, as I listen to this and reflect back on all we talked about, it just reinforces to me just what a good man you are. I've known this for years. I've had the privilege. I've never actually had the privilege to serve with you, but I had the privilege to serve around you. And I'll tell you, it speaks to me too, Jay, the fact that, hey, so you're with Worldwide Technologies. You've been with them for 11 years. And the reason you have that job is because someone you worked with thought enough about you to call you and say, do not commit before you talk to these people. So just think about that for a second, right? You are ready to sign up with another organization, which may have worked out. It may have been just fine. But someone thought you made enough of an impression on someone that person called you and said, I think so high, and whether he said it in these words or not, what he was saying to you was, I think so highly of you. I think you are so valuable that I want you in this organization with me, and do not commit to anything else before you give this organization a chance. Just think about that for a second, man. Just think about the impact you had on the people around you, man. Right?
Yeah,
that's special.
And I have. I never take that for granted. Actually, it was the person who worked for me. It was one of my warrant officers.
Well, right? that just transitions.
And yeah, go ahead. I'm humble when you say that, but I give God the glory for that. It just it's important to do these reflections that you talked about. Say, hey, you didn't get there by yourself. There's a lot of people that help you through that process, and give credit where credit is due. You say we didn't work. We worked together for in the same community for many years, but you were the guy who got me to Fort Bragg back again, and in a period of transition. That's a whole story for another day. But again, your network and the ability to, if you treat people with dignity and respect, that's going to pay off in the end, right? When you treat people, doesn't mean you have to agree on everything you do, but you treat people with. I told that to my sons. You treat people with dignity and respect. That you're going to reap what you sow. Absolutely. If you treat people in a way that's disrespectful and you don't value them as human beings, that eventually is going to come back on you. Just like, it's the law of the harvest. You reap what you sow, you reap more than what you sow. And you reap at a different time when you sow. So those are kinds of things that over time, it made a difference. So I'm very humbled by it. Hopefully this conversation, it's been very beneficial to me just to recap a lot of the things and just kind of rehone a couple of the things that we talked about, just for the message. I think what you guys do is this is a tremendous asset for information, very down to earth. Hopefully it will be useful. And if we can help one person just be able to help into that proper transition from military to civilian life, because we all become civilians again, right? Eventually, right? Then it'll be it's worth the time. So
well, listen, man, you have been such a pleasure to have as a guest. I want to thank you for taking the time with us. I just want to thank you for being you, man. You are, like I said, you are a great man, and it's been such an honor and a privilege to have been around you in uniform. It's been an honor and privilege to be around you out of uniform and be associated with you. We didn't even get a chance to talk about it, but that's okay. But Jay actually leads the Alumni Association for the battalion that we both served in, and he's doing great things to help alumni of that battalion, family members of that battalion pursue their educational desires, and he's just doing great. So not only does he do great things with his in his workplace and helping veterans in his workplace, but outside of work, Jay continues to serve a community that he was a part of, that we were both a part of, and you're just a good man. And I just appreciate the opportunity to call you friend, man.
Same here, brother.
Ooh.
My privilege and honor to call you friend.
Yeah, well, that was a great episode, guys, as always, and I appreciate it, Jay. I'm gonna close it out here. I want to let everybody know you've been listening to Life After the Military, which is powered by Pivotal Moments Media. We hope you receive value from the podcast. I know what I did. I know Howie did. And Jay, I know you did too. But please subscribe to us, rate us on Apple Podcasts, share it with others, help us get that word out, as Jay said, to help that one person a day. That's our mission right now. And you can learn more about the organization Pivotal Moments Media at pivotalmomentsmedia.com, and check out our other channels that deal with mental fitness education. And we have a lot of inspirational educational content there for you. But for Howie Cohen and Jay Santiago, I'm Lee Elias. Thanks so much for joining us, and keep an eye out for more episodes of Life After the Military very soon. Have a great day, everybody.